Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about one of the skin concerns that affects so many women, and that skin condition is melasma. It's also known as chloasma, and I'll be honest, I was never taught it as chloasma. So I have had people actually in my clinic who have said to me, I've got something, I think it's called chloasma, and I'm like, do you mean melasma? And lo and behold, it actually does go by the name of chloasma as well. So you may have heard it referred to as that. But basically, melasma is a skin condition that affects mainly women. It can affect men, but it is rare. And the reason for that is that it's generally driven by female hormones. Melasma is characterized by dark brown to grey, sort of like tinted pigmentation that appears on the skin, and it can look like clusters of freckles that are really packed closely together. So it can form like a sort of quite an irregular shape, almost like little islands of pigmentation on the skin. It typically presents on the forehead and very commonly around the mouth, but can also appear on the cheeks as well. Melasma can look quite similar to just any old sun damage, but the general difference between sun damage and melasma is that sun damage will be like a more generalized pigmentation, where melasma will have like slightly more defined borders and will appear as actual patches on the skin. So like sun damage can appear as like a general dark cast over the skin, which would hit you on like the forehead, cheeks, nose, areas where the sun hits you the most. It can appear on the chest as well. And generally with sun damage, we get like a change in texture as well. But with melasma, you don't typically get a change in texture. So it'd just be your skin, but with, and I say your skin, and generally women start to almost accept this as just part of their skin, because it's almost like it can look like a bit of a birthmark. But it's absolutely not the case. Melasma is just like any other type of hyperpigmentation. It can be tricky to treat, especially in darker skin tones. But it's by no means impossible. One of the ways to tell if your pigmentation is melasma as opposed to, say, a post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation is, or just a general suntan, is persistency. So what you'll see, and the reason why I'm filming this video now, and I'm doing a lot of like stuff around peeling and things now, because actually this is a time when you can use it. So what you might find is that your melasma, once your general tan has faded, you get spots that actually remain. And as I say, they'll be on the forehead, cheeks, and around the mouth typically. Now, melasma is generally driven by a surge in female hormones. And so for that reason, there are so many things that can affect the hormones and can cause melasma to present. But typically, women will find that they will present with melasma after a pregnancy, or if they've been using the oral contraceptive pill, or if anything else has caused them to have a sudden surge in female sex hormones. If you've had people in your family, like your mum, your sister, if they've suffered with melasma, you are more likely to suffer with it as well. And lastly, it does tend to affect darker skin tones more than pale skin tones. So if you are Fitzpatrick 3 to 6, so that is like anywhere from your like olive Mediterranean type skin tone all the way up to your very dark like African type skin tone, you are more likely to suffer with melasma. Pigmentation disorders in general do tend to affect people with darker skin tones, because obviously we've got that melanin in the skin already, and there's like a more chance of those melanocytes, or the cells that produce melanin, to go awry. So those are your causes of melasma. Now we're going to look at the triggers. So a trigger could be somebody, she may have sort of like had a pregnancy. Okay, so let me actually paint a picture. A lady's had a pregnancy and then she's gone on a baby moon. Now she may not have actually had the melasma present had it not have been for that excessive sun exposure that she experienced on that lovely baby moon in the Maldives. Yeah, if you're lucky enough to go on a baby moon to the Maldives, then maybe melasma is going to be like the least of your problems. But no, you've had the pregnancy and then you had that sun exposure as well. That could be the actual trigger for the melasma. So those are your two triggers: excessive sun exposure and a pregnancy. Basically, if you are planning to get pregnant, take extra precaution making sure you're using your SPF. I would even go as far as using a hat if you're going to be having a lot of sun exposure. And of course, just making sure that we're feeding the skin with the right products to ensure that the presentation of melasma is minimized. So a mediator of melasma is anything that causes that biochemical reaction to keep on going. So we're looking at continued sun exposure without protection of the skin. And we're also looking at a continuation of that irregular or abnormal level of female sex hormones. So by now you probably figured out that your first port of call when it comes to treating melasma is to protect the skin from the sun and also to regulate those hormones. Now, to be honest, it's really important to regulate your hormones anyway. But if you are presenting with something like melasma, that could actually be your sign that the hormones are maybe out of balance, and it's worth having a look at. And this is why I really, really love skincare, because your skin can tell you so much about what's going on inside. And it seems like, you know, a vanity thing, but actually it's a really good indicator of your general health. So it's absolutely a good idea to sort of like keep an eye on your skin, look out for the changes, and don't just accept them as, you know, who you are now. If your skin is presenting a change, it's communicating with you that something is going awry inside and you need to have a little look deeper. So when it comes to looking at protecting the skin from the sun, in the case of melasma, we want to look at a sunscreen that protects your skin from not only the light but also the heat. So that means that we're going to be looking at a physical sunscreen as opposed to a chemical sunscreen. So a formulation that contains zinc and titanium dioxide is the one that you want to go with. As I've mentioned in previous videos, any sort of inflammation in the skin, and obviously heat is going to cause a bit of inflammation in the skin, that definitely drives the whole process of hyperpigmentation. So actually protecting the skin from the heat as well is definitely a good idea. Now, some people find that their melasma actually improves in the winter. In fact, I've seen that a lot of the time when women come in, they say, I've sort of been seeing them for over the course of a year, wouldn't do anything too drastic throughout the summer. And then by the time the autumn winter comes, they'd be like, oh, I think it's actually improving on its own. It can appear to be getting better on its own because obviously that overall tan has lifted. And so of course that's going to make the pigmentation look lighter. But in some women, they actually have more of a contrast between the untanned skin and the melasma. And so actually they feel like it looks worse. So you might find that you sort of like fall into either one of those camps. But whether it looks like it's improving in the winter or not, it's really important, and not just for melasma, but just for general skin health, to make sure that we're protecting the skin the whole year round. SPF needs to be worn throughout the winter. Protects your skin from blue light from devices. So please just don't feel that, you know, just because the sun's not out that we need to skip SPF. That is absolutely not the case, whether you have melasma or not. So now that we've got the general skincare out of the way, let's have a look at sort of like more focused treatments for melasma. So oral medication has recently become a little bit more popular with melasma. Now, you may have already heard of tranexamic acid in your skincare, but it can also be taken orally. Although it is a relatively new method of dealing with melasma, so there isn't too much research available on it at the moment, but there is definitely a claim that it can help with melasma, so it's definitely worth having a look into or speaking to your doctor about trying it. Now, as I've already mentioned, one of the major drivers of melasma forming in the first place, and also the continuation, is an abnormal level of female sex hormones. There's actually a direct correlation between the levels of female sex hormones and the photoreceptive skin cells, so the skin cells that are affected by the sun. There's a direct correlation between the activity of those cells and the levels of female sex hormones. So from that, you can pretty much see that it is worth sort of like making sure that female sex hormones are in balance. So everybody has their own preferences. I see so many people coming in, they're on the pill because it improves their skin, or it improves their periods, or whatever other reason that they're on it. Unless you're using it as like actual contraception, I would just probably try and look at something else to alleviate those other symptoms. Even if you are trying to use it as a contraception, if you are finding that it's driving those sex hormones to a level that's not good for you, or you are presenting with like discoloration of the skin, and you've noticed that it's correlated to you taking the pill, perhaps looking at a non-hormonal form of contraception like a coil or something like that would be a more suitable option for you. So when it comes to actual skincare, so things that you can actually apply topically to the skin, one of the first things that I would look at is trying to increase that cell turnover. I haven't actually done a video on retinol in particular yet, but I definitely will do, because it is one of those ingredients that is really effective, but I know that quite a few people are a little bit, dubious about trying it. When we're trying to deal with melasma, as well as some other steps that I'm going to go into in a moment, actually making sure that those new cells are coming to the surface quicker is going to make sure that we can improve the appearance of the discoloration a little bit quicker for you. The next one we'll look at is tyrosinase inhibitors. And what these do is they actually suppress the activity of the melanocytes, or the cells that produce melanin. We have that initial appearance of the condition, and that might be sort of like further driven by the sun exposure. But what's happened is those cells that are producing the melanin, they are now kind of trained to keep producing that abnormal level of melanin. So what we want to do is actually retrain those cells to produce at a normal level, and that's what tyrosinase inhibitors do. One of the tyrosinase inhibitors that is really popular in the treatment of melasma is hydroquinone. But hydroquinone does have some pretty nasty side effects if you use it long term. It's also quite hard to come by in the UK. And so for that reason, I, rather than sort of risking getting it from somewhere that's not regulated, I go for a more natural alternative, which is arbutin. I've done a really quick review on the arbutin and vitamin C complex from The Ordinary. I'll link it above, but that would be a fantastic product, and those are two really good ingredients that are going to reduce that activity of the melanocytes, and also just generally brighten and protect the skin with the vitamin C as well. Chemical peels would be a really good addition to a skincare routine if you're trying to combat the appearance of melasma. Similar to retinol, they increase cell turnover and exfoliate the skin. And if you went for a chemical peel, something like a lactic acid with kojic acid, those are two ingredients that you're going to get a really nice lightening and brightening effect to the skin as well. So that would be a really good addition to your skincare routine. That's something that you could do at an esthetician's office, or there are products that you can use at home that are a bit milder, that you can use and for like a sort of more gentle and gradual effect. The next one we'll look at is antioxidants. Now, antioxidants, I've spoken about how much I love them for general skin health several times, but your vitamin A, which is basically retinol, vitamin C and vitamin E, they are very protective of the skin. So vitamin C has got photoprotective properties, so that's actually going to enhance the activity of your sun protection. And also vitamin E is very protective of the skin as well. Vitamin E I actually find really, really nice for evening your skin tone without the irritation that can sometimes come from vitamin C. Vitamin E is also fat soluble, so it will usually come in a more oily formulation, which will also be good for helping to maintain the skin barrier. Which brings me on to my next point. So maintaining your skin barrier is not just for people that have got sensitive skin. We want to make sure that we are keeping that skin barrier really nice and healthy by making sure that we're applying lots of ceramides and fatty acids to keep that skin barrier really protected. So that's going to give you another layer of protection from the environmental insults such as excessive sun exposure. So I just wanted to say lastly, when it comes to treating melasma, as I've said earlier, hyperpigmentation or pigmentation disorders, they do tend to affect darker skin tones more than they do lighter skin tones. And ironically, darker skin tones are more affected and more easily irritated by heat and light. So when it comes to using things like your retinol, your chemical peels, those really active ingredients, don't just rush in. I know, trust me, I know that pigmentation can be something that is really, crippling to your confidence and stuff like that. There is a way, but just don't be tempted to rush in, because you may just make the problem worse. So as I always say, when it comes to using your actives, start low and just go slow. Go for a gradual improvement and you will absolutely get there. If you've got any more questions about melasma or any other pigmentation disorder, please don't hesitate to get in touch. My contact details are in the description box. And of course, as always, I will put some product recommendations in there as well. I wish you the best of luck in trying to resolve your melasma. And just remember, you're beautiful anyway. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more content like this. So just hitting that like button and dropping a comment is going to help other people in a similar situation to get the help that they need as well. It doesn't cost a thing, doesn't take much time, just hit the button. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.